La palabra de Dios está siempre cerca, en cada momento, en cada lugar. Sin importar a dónde vayas, la esperanza siempre te acompaña. Estás escuchando Bethel Radio en los 99.9 FM, impartiendo fe, esperanza, palabra de Dios y música para el alma.
Testimonio vivo, contado por los mismos protagonistas de cómo Dios transformó sus vidas. Solo por Bethel Radio 99.9 FM, Grand Prairie, Texas. Lo que necesitas escuchar.
Hello, God bless each and every one of you, and welcome to our program, Living Testimony, here on 99.9 FM, Bethel Radio, Bethel by your side. From our studio in the Worldwide Missionary Movement in Grand Prairie, Texas, I am your host, Janet Cerrone. And if this is your first time listening, our program is about bringing testimonies each week directly from the people who have experienced them. And these are their true stories and how they have encountered God and what God has done for them, coming from different backgrounds, nationalities, circumstances, but they all share one thing in common. And that is that they have had a special encounter with Christ. And they are here to share that with us through this program. And we're so happy that you can listen in on this day. And you can find us on social media. Our Facebook is Bethel Radio GP. And our Instagram is Bethel Radio GP TX. And if you have any prayer requests, you can contact our line at 682-283-9082. Again, that phone number is 682-283-9082. And we welcome you to our program today. We are very excited to have all of you here. Whoever is listening, if you're listening in your cars, if you're watching us through YouTube or you're watching us through Facebook, we're very, very excited to have each and every one of you here. And we have today's guest has an amazing testimony, just like every other guest that we've had here. And we're very excited to have her today. And this is actually her second time with us. Previously, she shared her testimony with our other host, our sister Martha. But in this, she shared it in Spanish. But today, she's going to share it in English for all of our English speakers. So we're very excited that she can do this and then she can share it because there's so many different other people we can reach with the English language, and I just think it's so important for everybody to have a chance to listen to this amazing testimony. So we welcome you, Vanessa, Sister Vanessa. We have our Sister Vanessa Peña with us today, and we welcome you to our program. And I'm going to have you introduce yourself to our listeners. So go ahead, hermana.
Hi, God bless every listener that are tuned in. I want to thank God for this opportunity. Like my sister just said, my name is Vanessa Peña. I was born and raised in Dallas, Texas, and moved to Grand Prairie in my teenage years. I'm currently 34 years old.
34 years old, so very young still. Very, very young. And, you said you've lived here in Dallas, Texas all your life. So basically, Texas has been your home, right? Yes. And then I know I also previously had your daughter, Jocelyn, with us previously, and she had an amazing testimony too as well. And it was so amazing to have like a youth to give their testimony. Usually you don't have a lot of youth giving testimony. So I think that was really great, and I was very happy to have her here as well. And now I have Mom here as well. So that's amazing. And we're gonna get into this testimony in just 1 second. If you're just tuning in, if you're just listening in, this is our program, Living Testimony, here on 99.9 FM Bethel Radio. And we're here from our studio at Worldwide Missionary Movement in Grand Prairie, Texas. And we're here with our guest, Sister Vanessa Peña, she's going to be sharing her amazing testimony with us today. And she really has an amazing testimony. And I remember when she first came. So I'm very excited to be able to get into this, hermana. And to start, we want to thank everybody who's listening in this moment. And we hope that this testimony really speaks to you. If you're somebody who may be going through the same things that maybe our sister has gone through, for you to know that there's still hope and that God is still changing lives, which is the most important thing about our program that we want to be able to share with people, is that Christ is still changing lives. Doesn't matter where you come from, doesn't matter what you've done, it doesn't matter what struggles it is, God can change that for the better. And we're going to get into this testimony. And hermana, Sister Vanessa, tell me, how was your life before you had it? Or tell me a little bit about, I know this is going to be more about your life before you had an encounter with Christ. If you could tell me a little bit, how you grew up and, how, life was for you.
I come from a nuclear family.
Okay.
Mom, dad, I have a brother.
Okay.
And just us four, small family. Unfortunately, we didn't come from a Christian background. All of us.
Yeah.
I guess you can say that we all had an encounter with Christ later in life.
Okay.
My father, before coming to Christ, he was an alcoholic. My mother pretty much just struggled with her marriage because of the fact that he drunk.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much what I can remember from my childhood.
Right.
Just more just that.
More just that, yeah. At what age do you remember that your father kind of came to Christ? Was it more like in your teen or you?
Yes.
Yeah, in your teen years.
In my teen years, I would say about preteens, I guess you can call it.
Okay.
12.
Okay. And how was that age for you? Preteen years.
Oh, it was difficult.
It was difficult.
Very difficult.
Yeah.
I feel like whenever you are not raised in a Christian home,
yeah,
Christ is not in your home.
Yeah.
You see a lot. You experience the world. Like
more. Yeah. I feel that you end up maturing too fast, or not.
Fast.
I wouldn't even see maturing. You end up experiencing things that you shouldn't experience around that age because you're not ready for it.
Right.
But because there's not a guidance, I come from I would say I come more from a dysfunctional home. So that I definitely do relate to that. You struggle more because you're figuring it out, not in the Christ way, where Christ guides you not to fall through, or you kind of just smack through life really hard.
So it's very difficult. And then my brother's very close in age with me.
Oh, really?
So we were both, just struggling teens, I guess you can say.
And what's the age gap for you guys?
He is about a year and a half older.
Okay. So you're the youngest.
Yes.
You're the youngest. He's the oldest. Yeah, but a year and a half is very, very, very close in age.
We had like, friends. We could share. We shared a lot. I feel like me and my brother were a lot closer when we were younger.
Yeah. I can see that. I can see how that would be very, very close relationship, especially the age is not a huge age gap. Mm-hmm. So tell me, you said your dad, which I know personally, and he, it's amazing because when you tell me, oh, he used to be like this, I'm like, really? Him? I can't believe it because it's very hard to picture that because I know him personally, and he's like one of the first people here to pray, and he never misses. Like, he's always here at church. So it's very hard to see that, but it's also amazing because that's how powerful God is and what he does to people. So he, around your teen years, you say he comes to Christ.
It all started with my mom.
Okay.
She's the one that actually knew a friend that invited her to her home. They were doing
like a Bible study.
Bible study, you can call it. Yes. So that's how she started going there. She started inviting her.
Okay.
And she would, tell them about the marriage problems she was having.
Yeah.
Drinking.
Yeah.
And slowly, the sisters would go in and they would visit my father, and they convinced him to go to church. He accepted Christ.
Wow.
That's when we come in. We were rebellious, I would say.
Yeah.
We didn't want to.
Yeah.
They will force us to go.
I can imagine that change was so drastic.
Yes, it was. And when you're not used to that kind of lifestyle, you don't understand.
Right.
Yeah.
What did you think when you first saw your dad coming to Christ? Did you believe him, or did you think he was going to go back to the same thing?
Yes, because I guess, first of all, the age.
Yeah.
I feel like that has a lot to do with it. You're
Right.
just like, no, you become like
incredulous.
Yes.
Yeah. Like you're just
I don't believe it.
Yeah.
He'll probably, this is like his little, like a stage he's going through, and it's
going to phase out, and
right.
we're going to be back to the same
back
thing.
the same way we live.
Wow. And how were you thinking when you started seeing that it wasn't, he was like, really, like, I'm really going to do this?
Yes. When we first started all going as a family, and we saw that we would, every Sunday, because we started slow, we started going only on Sundays.
Right.
And another Sunday would come, and me and my brother again, we're going again. And
it was a very big change.
Yes, it was a big change.
Yeah. Right. And you said that around that time, you and your brother were a little bit more rebellious. It was teenage years. You guys were probably going to high school already.
We were about middle school.
Middle school?
We were in middle school. And then, so we started going with them. Like I told when I was giving it in Spanish, I was telling her, Hermana Marta, that at the beginning when we would go, it's almost like we were forced to go.
Right.
But we knew that God had a plan for us. He wanted to save us. But I feel like we didn't understand
at that time what was going on. It was more of I have to be here. Why am I here?
Yes. And it was a struggle because your friends also influencing you.
Yeah.
And, it's harder.
Yeah. How did you feel that peer pressure influenced you during that struggle?
I feel like whenever you're in that age, you're trying to figure yourself out.
Yes, definitely.
And you also go with the flow, I guess you can say.
Yes.
You try to imitate others, do what others do, and sometimes that's not good.
Yeah.
If you're doing that.
I feel like around that age, you're trying to find an identity. You want to see who you're going to become, who you are. But sometimes you end up taking the identity of others because you yourself are not self-confident, or you have, self-esteem issues. Especially around that age, it's very hard to be confident.
Yes.
But I think, when you have a relationship with God, He gives you identity. But without Christ, it's very hard to have one.
Hard.
You kind of pick the identity of whoever's around you.
Right.
So
the environment, everything.
Yes. So definitely. And tell me more. So how was your life then? So before Christ, you said, you started going to church, but you weren't understanding what was going on.
I wasn't understanding what was going on. And I know that when we would get there to church, we would see everybody praising, some people crying, and we didn't understand what's going on. Right. But I know that God, even in the midst of all that, He was working in our hearts. But it was very hard. It was very hard. We were I guess you can say, whenever you're young, you are more concerned about what your friends are going to say. It's
Right.
gonna make fun of you because of this lifestyle. And I feel like that influenced in us.
And a lot. And so your parents, your mom, your dad were going to church. They were getting more involved
Yes.
with Christ. They were having an encounter with Christ. That started changing. What changes did you see in your home?
Well, first of all, the drinking stopped.
Yeah.
So, and that felt good.
Yeah.
It felt good because you can definitely feel the peace that was in the home and how it really does affect. That's why when I think about it, it's very difficult whenever you come from a home that, anything is involved, drinking,
Right.
anything,
Of course.
and how it affects your children.
Yeah, because you see it, you live it, and a lot of people, especially parents nowadays, they think it's not a big deal. They're like, well, it's not like I'm making them drink.
Right.
It's my life, and I can do whatever I want. There's this big mentality about, well, I'm not harming anybody. I'm the one who's drinking, or I'm the one who's doing it. But you don't realize how much you affect other people around you. And how it affects the household, how it affects the marriage, how it affects the children that are growing up in that home. It really does. And unless those children or those parents have an encounter with Christ, it's a vicious cycle.
It is.
It's a vicious cycle. Those children grow up with trauma.
Yes.
Sometimes there's a lot of parents that are like, well, my child doesn't visit me anymore. And it's like, well, let's go back. What happened? What happened that caused that? But so tell me, what challenges did you face in around high school?
So roughly when it all started, I think I would say about approximately 2 to 3 years we were going.
Okay.
And then there was a change when we moved from Dallas to Grand Prairie.
Okay.
So he was able to purchase a home. So that's why we moved to Grand Prairie. And that was right before I started high school.
Okay.
So it was still in middle school, like right before we started high school, I would say by 8th grade.
Okay.
We moved to Grand Prairie. Here, we start meeting new people. Again, it's almost like you're attracted to the wrong crew that you shouldn't be attracted to. And we had, I would say we make good choices when it came to friends.
Yeah.
And I started dating at a very young age.
Yeah, so around the high school teen year. Usually that's when you have a lot of interest and you start seeing or being attracted. A lot of teens around that age, they do. And it's nothing, I don't think it should be taboo in the sense of like it happens. I think it's more of communicating with our teens and telling them, hey, you will
and
have
the
feelings.
Choices you make.
But there's consequences
Yes.
to choices you make.
Yes.
And I think sometimes it's almost like a taboo subject. Nobody wants to talk about it. But I think it's important to talk with our
It
teens
is.
and to guide them the right path. That, yes, you might have feelings, but don't be guided just by that. That's not your guidance. Like that, first and foremost, God is your guidance.
Right.
And he's the one that's going to guide you the right track. And then especially at that age, focus on school.
Right.
Like there's so many other more important things to focus on than that. The time will come when that will happen. But right now, enjoy that you're a teen and that you can.
I think we try to grow up too fast.
Yes, we do.
That's what happened.
We do. And then when we're adults, we wish we were back to being teenagers or be back to being kids. But so tell me, you started dating. How did that affect you in that moment?
So just like every teenager, I met this guy and we start, talking. But what happened that eventually talking led to something else.
Yeah.
And I ended up pregnant at the age of 15 years old.
Wow, you're very, very young.
Very young.
How did you feel when you found out?
It's a feeling that I can't explain. That I feel like only people that have lived it can probably relate
to it.
It was like, oh my God, what did I do?
Yeah.
What have I done? And that's whenever it all, like, that's how I guess you can say everything started for me.
For you.
Yes, I became very depressed. I became very, I knew, deep down, I knew that I had failed.
Yeah.
And I failed my parents. You feel that shame.
Yeah.
Because you know you did something you weren't supposed to.
Right. And I think also a lot of it too, the devil,
Yes.
the enemy, he puts those thoughts even further to people to remind them every day of their shame.
Yes.
And I think it's important that whenever God corrects you, he does it with love,
Yes.
but he doesn't shame you.
Mm-mm.
And if you ever feel shame,
That's not
that's not from God.
No.
You will feel, oh, I did something.
Oh,
bad.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
You will feel it. Oh, I did something bad. But you know God's going to help you through it. But the devil
He started
shames.
working in my mind.
Yeah.
Like-
How did that affect you in your pregnancy? Feeling like
It did affect me because now I didn't know this. You
Right.
know, you learned at
Right.
that age. I was completely clueless.
Yeah.
But it affects the health of the baby as well, like the feelings, their emotions.
Right.
How we feel, it affects them too. And I remember I would cry a lot. I would cry a lot. And I want to say what hurt me the most is the fact that I didn't talk about it.
You just kept it inside.
I just kept it inside, all inside. I wouldn't talk to nobody.
About how you were feeling.
How I was feeling. I just remember I would lock myself in a closet at home because I didn't want my parents to see me cry. I didn't want nobody to see me cry because then you get those questions, what's wrong? And
like what happened?
what happened?
When did you tell your parents that you were pregnant?
I kept it.
Until the longest moment possible?
Yes, because I was smaller then.
Right.
So physically you couldn't tell
that you were.
I was approximately about 4 months when I told my mom first.
Right.
And then it was, she was like, okay, we have to talk to your father.
Right. How did she take it?
She was hurt.
Right.
She was hurt. But I'm very thankful that she didn't make me feel, what word to use?
Like she didn't make you feel more ashamed
Right.
or basically a lot of parents at that time when a child does something, they're like, well, you're on your own.
Yes.
Type of thing. I think she obviously was shocked by the
Yes,
news, but
very
embraced
shocked.
you
Yes.
would say, in a way. Okay, well, that's great.
My father, on the other hand, my father did not take it well at all.
I mean,
And obvious reason.
yes.
So it was, out of all of that, I think what hurt me the most is knowing that I hurt them.
Right.
That's what hurt me the most. But he's like, you know what? It's almost like if he needed time. He
Right. He
couldn't
just
even-
needed to cool off
Yes.
type thing. And I understand. I mean, you see your kids and they're always your babies.
Right.
Like my child's 8 and he's
Yeah.
still my baby. Like I do see it that way. And I'm pretty sure every parent, you see your child, they could be 20 years old.
Yes.
They're still your babies. They're still your babies. And seeing that, I can't imagine like the emotions of like what is going to happen
He was
now.
like, what?
Yeah.
What have you done? What happened? And it was bad.
So you get through that hurdle.
Mhm.
You communicate to your parents, hey, this has happened. I'm pregnant now. You're 15 years old. How did that affect you with your labor or your delivery? Because
Yeah.
I'm imagining also such a young age to go through that change physically as well.
Well, yeah. It's they don't recommend, obviously.
Right.
This is mainly for like the girls, all the youth that can hear us right now.
Yeah.
They don't. Your body is not prepared for a birth
Right.
at that age.
Yeah, for sure. So you have your delivery.
Yes.
How was it after you had your baby?
Well, it kind of started right before I had her.
Okay.
I started with, I had depression.
Okay.
I had depression because everything that I held inside
Yeah.
became depression.
So you didn't talk about it.
No.
You mentioned you didn't talk about it with
Yes.
anybody. You just kept it inside and
Even like suicidal thoughts. Even like when the enemy would tell me, just end it all. When he would say, just take your life and all of this is going to go away. You know, you will wake up every day and it was like right there.
It was constant
It was
every day?
constant, yes. Every single day.
Wow.
It was hard.
I can't imagine. It's definitely very hard. So every day you were having these thoughts.
Yes.
You were getting close to delivery time. Was it intensifying as
Yes.
you were
Yes.
getting close to delivery?
Definitely. I remember she was due in February, and I ended up having her about a month early, about 3 weeks early, I would say.
Yeah. And so around January.
Yes.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So you have her. Did you think maybe after having her that your thoughts were going to go away?
Yes, but it became worse.
It became worse.
Yes.
So tell me, you had her, which was our sister Jocelyn, which we had her here. So you have her. And then after that, what happened?
So that depression and kept getting worse. So
Right.
now we're like in psychosis stage, I guess.
Okay, gotcha. So did you go into postpartum depression then when
Yes.
after you had her?
Yes.
Were you living with your parents still?
I still was. Yeah. I
Okay.
was still, I was living with my parents.
Yes.
And so we go there
Right.
to have the baby. Whenever we're at the hospital,
Mm-hmm.
I completely lost it. That's whenever, and when I mean I lost it, I
Mhm.
mean as in like, you can say I went crazy. I went crazy. The doctor was like, what's going on? What's
Right.
happening? He couldn't even understand what was going on because,
Okay.
again, this is something that I never talked about.
Okay.
It was something that I was just holding inside. And whenever he saw me in that stage where
Right.
I was not being, I was not in my right mind
Right.
anymore. And I was acting weird. I would say stuff.
Right.
I would see stuff like those shadows are following me and just.
So
just-
basically, like it almost like you held it in so long and it just blew up.
Right.
Once you had your baby, once you had your daughter, it just blew up.
Yes.
And you couldn't contain it anymore.
Like,
So what happened then?
that's when he made the decision that my daughter was gonna be separated from me, and that I was gonna have to be checked into a mental institution.
Wow.
Yeah.
And at that moment, do you remember anything about the decisions made? Do you think that hurt you more? Or do you just feel like you couldn't even cope with what was going on at that time? Yeah. I feel like that's, such a hard thing to go through. And it's very difficult when you feel like you can't keep it together. And I'm pretty sure there's so many people that could be listening right now that maybe are going through those type of thoughts and through those things.
You feel alone. You feel ashamed.
Yeah.
You feel like a lot of thoughts come in your mind.
Right, of course. And, the enemy makes he makes sure that people feel and remain that way because he doesn't want people to be able to look up and to see that there's a God that really loves them. And he'll make them stay in their shame and stay in their, in that mindset that things are not going to get better or that things are always going to remain the same. But, you went through this, which was such a traumatic experience.
It was.
You're going to postpartum depression and you have your baby. Now you get checked in a mental institution. And we're going to get to the part of how basically how you struggled with that and how you were able to come out of that because you're here. So we know that there's a good part to this story.
Yes,
There is a good part to the story. But for whoever's listening, you're here in our program, Living Testimony. And we're listening to this very powerful testimony from our sister, Vanessa Peña. And we are going to just take a very small break. We're going to, on the second parter, you're going to listen to what God did, how God was able to take her out of this mental institution, because now she's had her baby. She has had postpartum depression. She's going to go into more details on what happened, why she was put in the mental institution, but she's here. And that means that God has done something amazing. So if you are listening, please stay tuned. We're just taking a very small pause, and we're going to get back to this amazing testimony, and we're going to get back to what God has done. So where you are listening here on our program, Living Testimony, here on 99.9 FM Bethel Radio, Bethel by your side, here from our studio in the Worldwide Missionary Movement in Grand Prairie, Texas. I'm your host, Janet Cerrone. We're just taking a very small break. Please stay tuned, because there is more to come. God bless you.
Ser diferentes es parte de nuestra humanidad.
Diferentes culturas y formas de pensar.
Pero hay algo que nos une en una sola fe y en una sola esperanza. Bethel nos une.
Une a tu familia.
Bethel nos une.
Une a la sociedad.
Bethel nos une.
Une al norte, centro y sur.
Bethel nos une.
Nos une, nos une.
Bethel nos une. Bethel nos une. Bethel nos une. Bethel nos une. Bethel nos une. Bethel nos une. Bethel nos une. Bethel nos une. Bethel nos une.
Mi padre nunca se quejó, pero yo sabía que su trabajo era pesado. Todas las mañanas se despedía de mí al partir y me daba un abrazo cuando volvía tarde por las noches. Fue durante ese tiempo que empecé a notar las marcas del trabajo esforzado en sus manos. Nuestro ritual continuó a diario. Todos los días teníamos comida en la mesa y una casa acogedora en la cual vivir. Todos los días me mostró el resultado de trabajar duro. Ahora, en mi madurez, cuando tengo deseos de quejarme sobre cuán difícil es la vida, vuelvo al trabajo, sonrío y me doy cuenta de cuánto aprendí de mi padre. La perseverancia, pásala, de la Fundación para una Vida Mejor.
Testimonio vivo, contado por los mismos protagonistas de cómo Dios transformó sus vidas. Solo por Bethel Radio 99.9 FM, Grand Prairie, Texas. Lo que necesitas escuchar. Bethel te acompaña. Estudio y Café, un programa de estudio y enseñanza bíblica, donde encontraremos a través de la palabra de Dios respuestas a todas nuestras inquietudes. Solo por Bethel Radio 99.9 FM, Grand Prairie, Texas. Te acompaña. Solo en Dios haya descanso mi alma. Bethel te acompaña.
Porque te acompañamos en cada momento, brindándote alegría, edificando tu vida y preparándote para afrontar grandes batallas, entregándote los consejos más sabios a través de enseñanzas que te ayudarán a fortalecer tu vida y hogar. Mediante testimonios de cambio y esperanza, seguimos trabajando para que tu vida se mantenga firme, sintonizando la radio que te bendice a través de Bethel Plus, Spotify y todas nuestras redes sociales. Nosotros somos Bethel Radio, siempre contigo. Bethel nos une.
La radio es un medio de comunicación que no ha pasado de moda, más al contrario, se fortalece cada día más. Por eso, en Bethel Radio nos esforzamos para que tengas la mejor programación. Sigue y continúa con nosotros, que tenemos más.
each and every one of you, and welcome back to our program, Living Testimony, here on 99.9 FM Bethel Radio, Bethel by your side, from our studio and Worldwide Missionary Movement in Grand Prairie, Texas. I am your host, Janet Cerrone, and welcome back to the second parter of this amazing testimony by our sister Vanessa Peña. If you are just listening in, I'm going to give a small recap of what we've been listening to. We're going to get in, that way we can get into the second part of this testimony. We were talking about basically our sister's life, how she experienced and what she experienced in her household. She came from a household where they weren't serving the Lord at the time, but in between were her teen years. Her father, who used to be an alcoholic before, and there was so much trouble going on, he came to Christ. Her mom came to Christ first, then her dad, and how that changed the dynamic of the home, how they started going to church, but how she hadn't really had an encounter with Christ then. She was just kind of going to church, and, you know, her parents made her go and stuff. She moved from Dallas to Grand Prairie. She basically started hanging out with different groups of people, especially when you're in high school. You just kind of, you know, you really want to fit in with the clique. And she meets somebody there. She is very young still. She meets somebody there. She gets pregnant at the age of 15. And for anyone at that age is such a sensitive age, and to have such a life-altering like change is very hard. So she is pregnant at 15. She tells her parents. Her parents obviously shocked, but support her. But she started getting depressed over the pressure of being pregnant at such a young age. She started feeling and keeping stuff inside and not telling anybody about it. This affected her when she went into delivery. She has her daughter, and now she goes into postpartum depression. And we were there in that part where she goes into postpartum depression, and it's almost like, in a way that our sister describes it, she almost loses it. Because she's been holding on to these feelings for so long. She didn't talk to anybody about it. She didn't tell anybody how she was feeling. She just kept it inside because she just didn't want to burden anybody else with the information. Because at that time, and correct me if I'm wrong, sister, you probably thought, I'm already burdening them for the fact that I'm pregnant at 15. I don't want to add more to that. So tell us, you know, Sister Vanessa, I know it's a very emotional topic to talk about, but we're going to try to get there with God's help. What you have your daughter, you go into postpartum depression. You said you literally almost lose it at that point. You just started hearing voices, started seeing things, and doctor basically had to remove your daughter from you. She stayed with your parents?
Yes.
And you went into a mental institution. How was that? How long were you there?
I was there a couple of weeks after birth.
Okay.
I was there for a couple of weeks because obviously my state of mind was not.
Did they tell you what they thought it was?
They diagnosed it with like postpartum depression, and then I went through like psychosis.
Okay.
It's the terminology.
Right. The psychological terminology for what you were going through.
Yes.
And would you recognize people or
no? Not all the time. It was very difficult, and now I understand that it wasn't me. It was like those demons that were trying to, pretty much make me go crazy. And I remember that my father was always there. He would go and visit me all the time. And I remember crying to him. I remember clinging on to him like a little baby.
Yeah.
My mom would stay in the lobby area with my daughter. Like I said, we had to be apart because they were afraid that I was going to do something to her.
So they were afraid you were a danger to your
Yes.
daughter at that time. So
Yes.
that's why she had to be removed because of the mental state.
Right.
And tell me, you were there for a couple weeks, so about 2 weeks?
Yeah, I would say about 3, maybe.
3, almost a month.
Almost
then,
a
maybe.
month, yes. They were just pretty much watching me to see how I was progressing, I guess you can say.
Right. Did you have suicidal thoughts when you were in there? as
When
well?
I was in there, it was very sad. It was
Yeah.
very sad because you go into this place and you're like, what's going on? You see people there. And I'm not sure if I'm saying it correctly, if it was like a mental institution or maybe like a rehab center right before you go into...
The mental institution.
Right.
Okay. So
So
you were
it-
basically... I think
Like
that
a-
makes more sense. Yeah. You were
Yeah.
probably in a rehab center and they were going to monitor you
Yes.
to send you to a
send
mental
me to the mental
institution.
Yeah. So that's whenever it took a turn. I remember that at this point, my father was asking the church that we were going to before we moved to asking for prayers, because we know now that prayer is powerful.
Yes.
And he would ask them to pray for me. I had a brother fast for me.
Wow.
And that's like the beauty of the Lord.
Yeah.
That's where we see his love.
Right. Of course. Yeah, because it could be people that don't know you,
Yeah.
but they're willing to give that time for your cause, for whatever it is that you're going through. And I think that's amazing. That's God's true love right there, because even though we might not know who that person is, but we feel...
I will always thank him. Well, I thank God.
Yeah.
I thank God, but I thank everybody that in the moment
took that time to do
took the
it.
time to take, say a little prayer for me.
Yeah.
Obviously that helped. I
Yeah.
know it was that.
So 3 weeks passed.
Yes.
You're there. What happened?
At
What
this-
what finally happens to
So at this point, they're ready to send me away
to the actual mental
to the
institution?
actual, yes, because they were like, okay, the medication, because they evaluate you, this
Yeah.
whole time that you're there.
Yeah.
They give you your pills. It kind of feels like if you're in jail, kind of, because everything's timed. They make sure that you do take your pills.
Yeah.
And you're just being monitored by the staff there.
Yeah.
And they were like, they will sit me down and have sessions with me. How do you feel today? Has anything changed? And I would say at this point, my mind was still not okay. So they would just be like, okay, no, she's not ready. She's not ready. So there was a date where they had decided, okay, pills are not working.
Right.
The sessions we're doing with her are not working.
Right.
And that's whenever they're like, okay, we're going to go ahead and send her to
To the
this-
mental, something more locked in.
like the asylum. How do you-
asylum?
That.
The asylum. Okay, so they were really going to send you to an asylum where you weren't going to be able to really get out from there.
Once you're in there, it's like
It's very hard.
very hard. So they're like, okay, if she doesn't get better, at this point, she is not psychosis anymore. She's a schizophrenic.
Wow.
So, and like I said, everybody, the church was praying for me. Even myself, I started having like internal battles.
Yeah.
I will remember. That's why it helps, and I know that a lot of the times when we go to church,
Yeah.
we think, I'm just here pretty much because I have to, your attitude and stuff, but
Yeah.
that really does. At the beginning, you're like, okay, is it making an impact on my children? And it really does. I feel like it does. You might think it doesn't, but it does.
Yeah.
Because that's whenever I will remember the word of God. That's whenever I will remember, like the times we will praise him. And I was like, oh, wow, like that will come to my mind. But I know
the word
that
of
it
God
was-
comes to
Yes,
mind, and
yes.
and it really does. The word of
Yes.
God comes to mind in the most troubled of
Yes,
times,
it does.
and I think that's why it's so important, because God's word is so powerful.
Yeah.
And God's word doesn't return back empty.
Yes.
It really doesn't.
Yes.
It has a purpose. When the word goes out, it has a purpose. And for you, it was this time. Maybe around the time you heard it, you're like, okay.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. I
Yeah.
brushed it off. I was like, yeah, that's not for me. I'm young.
Right.
I'm still living life. Because sometimes we have like this mentality.
Yes.
You know, you're young. You think you know everything.
Yeah.
You know, and in that moment, I realized God. Like,
Yeah.
I called out and said, Lord,
Yeah.
help me.
Yeah.
Help me because I can't take it anymore.
Yeah.
I don't want to be here for the rest of my life.
Right.
I want to be able to see my child grow up. I want a life after this. I don't want this for myself.
Right. And you said that, you had a church. There was a church praying for you as well.
My father, my mother, everybody was.
Everyone's praying. And you get closer to that due date.
Yes.
How many days was it before the due
I
date?
would say about a couple of days.
A couple. So it was like really
right?
close, very close, very tight.
Very tight. Yeah.
And what happened? Did something just like...
Yes. Out of nowhere. It was so weird. Like, that's why when I talk about it now,
Yeah.
I'm like, it was 100% God. But
Yeah.
in the moment, I didn't understand.
Right.
And they have the last session with me when the one that was going to determine,
Wow.
okay, she's either stays or goes. And I remembered that God allowed me to have like this, like a moment where I was actually answering all the questions they were telling me, and like I was able
Right.
to talk to them like fine.
Like nothing was
like
going
nothing
on.
was wrong.
Yeah.
And so now I think about it, I was like, that was not me. That was God.
Yeah.
But he had mercy. He had mercy on me. And they approved me for me to leave that place.
So basically they gave you your release to go.
Yes.
How was after when you left?
When I left, I was still having my struggles, my
Right.
battles. It wasn't, I can't say that it was perfectly fine.
Right.
It was like a process. And then after a while, I would still have to take this medication I was
Right.
on, this antidepressant medication. And slowly I started
Getting better.
Yeah.
Getting better. So you go back home.
I go back home.
You go back home. You see your baby.
Yes.
You started having this process. Did you go to church immediately, or did it take you still a little?
So I remember whenever I was going through this, I remember telling God, I made a promise to him.
Yeah.
And I remember telling him, Lord, if you get me out of this place, I will always testify what you've done in my life.
Glory to God.
And I remembered when I left, they're like, okay, we're going to go to church, thank the Lord for what he's done. And I remember going to church, and I remember testifying.
Yeah.
And I was excited. I was like, okay, I did what I promised.
Right. Like the one time.
Yeah.
That's it. Yeah.
Yes.
That's how we think
Yes,
about it.
that's what we
sometimes.
think about, but God's like, no.
No, that wasn't the promise.
Yes. Yeah, you always have to testify what I've done. But I didn't understand that, Sister Janet.
Right.
Even though I had experienced all of these battles,
Yeah.
I still didn't understand what God wanted in my life.
Right.
And instead of going back, trying to follow Christ like you should,
Mm-hmm.
I kind of went back to my old ways, being rebellious. And it's like you figured, oh my God, what God has done, and that should be enough for you to stay in his path. But no, it didn't really happen
Yeah.
until later.
Until later. So we're going to get to that. So you grow up, you still have the struggles. What was it that made you think, okay, you went through a very traumatic thing. You were also very young. I think it's important to note you were 15 when this all happened.
Yeah.
At 15, we're not really mature.
I'm sure.
So it's very hard at that age to have such an experience and then expect to be like, okay, I understand and I'm gonna go. I think you were still trying to figure that out as well. What made you decide, let's say time has passed now. So how old were you when you kind of started having, or a need that made you want to be like, okay, I need to go to church? What happened that you're like, this is not working for me anymore?
I started seeing the way. Okay, so now by this point, I'm a mom now.
Yes.
And I see how my daughter is growing up, and
Yeah.
I would see certain behaviors, and I'm like, oh, okay.
Did it remind you
It reminded
of you?
me of myself, and I was like, this is all my fault. And I don't want her to go through what I went through. I want her to have a better life than I did.
Yeah.
I want her to make better choices. And I think that triggered it. And then also, I feel like God was also working inside of me.
Right.
And I started thinking about, if I die, where am I going to go?
Yeah.
Will I be saved? And I knew the way I was living.
It wasn't.
No.
No. Yeah.
I was in another relationship by this point.
Yeah.
And
You were a lot old. You were
I was a
older.
lot older,
Yeah,
yes.
a lot older.
That was already like about. It took
a very long time.
a long time for me to come back. You can say it was about 27
Okay, you were about 27.
when I finally it's just one day. I'm like, God, I cannot live like this. I have to go back home.
Yeah.
Holly, I gotta go back to you. I need you. I want you to better my life, and I want my daughter to also have a better life.
So you start seeing your daughter kind of have the same tendencies
Yeah.
or the same issues you were having, and you were able to recognize that.
Yeah.
So you were like, I need something different. I need something to happen.
Yes.
For that fear, obviously, what you went through was so traumatic. You don't want your
No.
daughter to go through
No.
that. It
Nobody.
was painful, traumatic. You don't want her to go through that.
Yeah.
When did you come to church for that?
My dad had invited me to a Mother's Day.
Yes, I remember.
I remember that. A Mother's Day service, and he's like, I want you to go to church, and he never stopped.
Inviting you?
Yeah.
He always invited you.
Yes, he always invited me. He will always tell me, talk to me about the Lord, and when I wasn't
Yeah.
in church, and he never gave up.
I mean, and I could definitely testify to that. He never gave
Yeah.
up. There was a point in time where he was coming by himself.
Yes.
And I would see him always on the altar praying. I could never hear his prayer. But that man was praying. That's all I could tell you, that he was praying. And I always thought, I wonder what he's praying about. And I in my mind, I was like, probably his family. He's probably praying for his family. And I remember slowly your daughter started coming with him.
Mhm.
Your daughter would come with him a lot of times. And then basically your daughter would start coming. Then your mom would start coming. And then it was basically, they would start coming. And you came that day. So day, which it was a Mother's Day service. Usually these are, so just to explain to our audience, whoever is listening, just reminding you're listening here on our radio station here at Bethel Radio 99.9 FM here in Grand Prairie, Texas. And you are listening to our program, Living Testimony. We're here with our sister, Vanessa Peña, who is sharing her amazing testimony with us. And for those who are just jumping in, she's talking about her testimony, how, what God has been doing in her life. And we're here in the part where she really has an encounter with Christ. She needed a change. And we basically are getting there. And I remember this Mother's Day service. So the Mother's Day service usually is a service that you kind of is a very special service. Sometimes people think about it, oh, it's just like a Mother's Day service. It's just, they're going to congratulate the mothers. Sometimes people don't think, I don't want to say this is not that important, but it's more of like, oh, okay, I go because it's Mother's Day. It's a celebration. I don't go because I'm going to have an encounter with the Lord that day.
Exactly.
A lot of people sometimes view it that way, and they tend to like, okay, well, let me go check it out.
Yes.
They'll usually come during those days. So, and we're gonna get to that. For all of those who are listening, this is Bethel Radio 99.9 FM. And just to let you know, if you want to follow us on social media, our social media on Facebook is Bethel Radio GP for Facebook. And then for Instagram, it's Bethel Radio GPTX. And if you have any prayer requests, our phone number is 682-283-9082. And you can also follow us through WhatsApp now. So we have WhatsApp, and it is Bethel Radio GPTX, I believe. So if you want to follow us through there, you can, and send your prayer requests there as well. So we get to this, Sister Vanessa. You come to the service for Mother's Day. What happens in that service?
Like you just said, you don't think nothing of it. I'm just going. And then it was more like, okay, I'm going to please my dad so he can.
Like, so I can get him off my back. I don't
Right.
He's going to be like telling me. So,
But little did I know God has something different.
wow.
I remember getting here.
Yeah.
I remember how the word touched me in such a powerful way that day.
Yeah.
It was like if God had put the exact words that I needed to hear.
Yeah.
And when they asked us to go to the front and you want to have a reconciliation with,
With the
Christ,
Lord. Yeah.
I said yes. I said yes. I need this. I need this
Yeah.
for myself. I need this for my family, for my daughter. I
Right.
need this. And I
Right.
remember going, the preacher praying for me, and
Yes.
it was just a beautiful experience that I'll never forget.
How did you feel when they were praying for you? Did you feel the same, or did you feel like a weight was being lifted? How did you feel? Can you describe that?
Yes, definitely a weight was being lifted. And in the moment, I feel like we really don't understand the spiritual world
Yeah.
and how it works. But it was doing something in me. It was breaking chains. It was taking all that out of me, because I feel like I was still living with a lot of emotions
Right. Of what had happened.
of what had happened. And
Do you think you had regrets, maybe
Yes.
shame still, and
shame
all of that?
still. Yes, definitely.
So now God is working with you. You have that experience, that amazing experience where you feel God's presence
Yes.
in a way. You feel like
I
that.
felt His love and His mercy.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And what do you do after this?
After I go home, I start, thinking about what I felt,
Right.
and I made the decision. Whenever you first go to the altar, you already make that decision.
Yes, for sure.
So when I went home, I was like, okay, this is going to be a lifestyle change. Like, this is it.
Yeah.
I'm giving it all to God,
Yeah.
giving my life all to Him, and
Yeah.
I don't want to look back.
Right.
At this moment, I didn't care about
Anything
nothing.
else? You're like, I need this.
I need this, and that's what happened.
That's amazing. And what did you go with were there any struggles that
Yeah.
went on when you decided, okay, I'm gonna follow Christ?
Yes,
I need this.
there was a struggle. Yeah, I go back, and I'm still in a relationship,
Right.
but I was not married. And I remember that I talking to my partner now my husband,
Yeah.
and I remember telling him, hey, I had an encounter with Christ, and he's just looking at me like, what is wrong with you?
Yeah.
And I'm like, I've decided to follow Christ, and that's it,
Yeah.
20, I think I was about 27 or 28 years old at this point, and I was like, that's it. I'm not looking back. Like, I don't care. I'm
Right.
leaving it all, and I just want to follow Christ, and that's it. And he's like, okay. And at first he couldn't understand,
Right.
and that's whenever I told him, hey, eventually
Yeah.
we got to the point where like,
Right.
hey, we got to get married.
Yeah.
You're trying to fix your life
Yes. Of
because
course.
the way that you're living is not the way that God.
And I feel like it also changes the dynamic of your household when you start doing everything for God.
Yes,
It changes the dynamic
but for the better.
for the better. So how your husband decides, now your husband, he
Yeah,
decided to
now.
marry you. So
Yes, so
it
at
happened.
first he's like, okay, I told him, I talked to him, I sat down, I said, look, I don't want to pressure you.
Yeah.
I don't want to pressure you into this, but I
Right.
do want to fix my life in front of
Yes.
Christ. And that's what matters to me now.
Wow. That's amazing. And God obviously honored that
Yes.
because you guys get married. You are still here persevering in a church. I know he's not here yet, but I know one day God is going to do something great in his life as well. Because everybody has a moment in time, and God has a time for everybody. How does that change your dynamic in your household?
I made a lot of changes. Like, I feel like when Christ comes in, it's this light, that light of Christ. And like I said, it changes it for the better. And I don't regret not one bit that decision until this day. I've had my battles. I've had a lot of things I've gone through, because God doesn't say that your life is going to be completely perfect after you accept him. No, but he is with you, all the time to help you overcome any obstacles that may come.
What would you say to someone who's going through something similar that you've gone through?
Jesus is the answer. Jesus is the answer. It's not about religion. It's about Christ. He's our liberator. He's the one that will break your chains. He's the one that would take away, because he knows you more than anybody.
Yes.
And if you don't mind, I want to share like this
of course.
text of the Lord.
Yes.
That's in Psalm.
Yes.
Just real quick.
Of course.
It says, "For those has possessed my reins, thou hast covered me in my mother's womb. I will praise thee, for I am fearful and wonderful made. Marvelous are thy works, and my soul knows right well." And when I read this, I think about what God has done in my life.
Yeah.
And it's very true. He knows us.
Yes, of course.
From before we even existed.
Yeah.
And a lot of the times, whenever you're going through difficult times or you're not in the right place, you even think about it and say, why was I even born?
Yeah.
What was my purpose in this world? But I want to tell those who have those thoughts that there is a purpose of your life. There's a purpose. There's a reason why you're here.
Yeah.
And all you have to do is surrender to God, and He will guide you.
Amen. Amen. I totally agree. Just surrender to Christ, and you'll see the wonderful things God can do in your life. Because all of us that are here, we're here because one day we encountered God. God found us.
Yes.
Because we don't find God. God finds us. And that's the most amazing thing. So, we're so grateful that you were able to share your testimony with us. Such a powerful testimony from coming from a almost dysfunctional home in a way, a little bit.
Yeah, it was.
With, so many issues going on, your father being alcoholic, he finds Christ, and how that's a domino effect.
Yes.
Like parents.
Influence.
Parents or teenagers that are listening, it takes one person to do a big change in the family. One person. So just one person, make that change for yourself, and you'll see how that's a ripple effect and how it affects everybody else. Because it started with your mom, then your dad, then your daughter is coming, and your other daughter's coming as well. So she's sometimes going to here. And I think it's so amazing. It just takes one good decision to change the outcome of everybody around you. So thank you guys for listening in, whoever's listening. This has been our program, Living Testimony, here on 99.9 FM Bethel Radio, Bethel by your side. And again, we follow us through our social media, so that way you can know when the next episode drops. The Facebook handle is Bethel Radio GP, and then our Instagram is Bethel Radio GP TX. And if you have any prayer requests, you can contact our line at 682-283-9082. Thank you so much for staying here with us, for listening in, and we can't wait to have you next time. God bless each and every one of you. This has been our program.